Hi, this is Margaret from Civic Nebraska's voting rights team. Today we're going to be taking a look at religious requirements and the impact they have had on voting rights. I do have a guest with me today. We have Jon Marx. He is the CD3 committee chair for Nebraska Counts and the chair of the Adams County Nebraska Counts committee. Thanks for joining us, Jon. So to look at voting rights and religious requirements, we have to go way back to before the United States even existed. So prior to the US Constitution, each of the 13 colonies made their own rules about voting. Most of the colonies limited voting to only white property-owning men, and many also set religious belief as a qualification. In 1671, Plymouth Colony restricted suffrage to only free men, orthodox in the fundamentals of religion. This did not include, however, Quakers or Baptists who were banned from voting. 1682, in the colonies of Pennsylvania, Carolina, and Rhode Island, voting rights were restricted to Christians only. However, they also barred Baptists and Quakers from voting. Delaware required every elected official to affirm belief in both the Old and New Testaments of the Christian Bible. In 1718, after nearly 70 years of religious tolerance, Maryland banned Catholics from voting. New York and Virginia did likewise. Although Jewish merchants had settled with the Dutch West India Company in New York as early as 1652 and had been voting in the colony, in 1737, New York revoked the voting rights of Jewish men. They cited that in not appearing to this House that persons of the Jewish religion have a right to be admitted to vote for Parliament men in Great Britain, it is the unanimous opinion of this House that they ought not be admitted to vote for representatives in this colony. 1777, Georgia's Constitution not only contained an exclusion on voting and holding elected office for non-believers, but it further limited voting rights to only Protestants. In 1778, South Carolina did likewise. Their constitution stated that all persons and religious societies who acknowledge that there is one God and a future state of rewards and punishments, and that God is publicly to be worshiped, shall be freely tolerated. The Christian Protestant religion shall be deemed and is hereby constituted and declared to be the established religion of this state. That all denominations of Christian Protestants in this state, demeaning themselves peacefully and faithfully, shall enjoy equal religious and civil privileges. The Massachusetts Constitution of 1780 did not extend suffrage to agnostics or atheists and barred all non-Christians from elected office. It read, "It is the right as well as the duty of all men in society, publicly and at stated seasons, to worship the Supreme Being, the great creator and preserver of the universe." Massachusetts further required all its taxpayers to contribute to support Christian schools. Finally, in 1787, the Confederation Congress drafts the new Constitution and debates religious freedom. Reverend Daniel Schuette, a Baptist cleric from Hingham, Massachusetts, said, "Who shall be excluded from natural trust? Whatever answer bigotry may suggest, the dictates of candor and equity I conceive will be none. Far from limiting my charity and confidence to men of my own denomination and religion, I believe there are worthy characters among men of every denomination, among Quakers, Baptists, the Church of England, the Papists, and even among those who have no other guide in the way to virtue and heaven than the dictates of natural religion." So obviously he's pretty woke for 1787, but even he does not conceive of someone who wouldn't have some sort of supreme being that they have a religious belief in. The First Amendment of the Bill of Rights is adopted, which states, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion." Despite the protections of the First Amendment, state constitutions still barred on religious grounds many Americans from voting. South Carolina finally eliminated religious exclusions in 1790. Maryland did not extend voting rights to Jewish men until 1828. Then we move ahead in American history quite a ways until 1997, and we're going to look at a historic case called Silverman versus Campbell. Herb Silverman, an atheist, applied to become a notary public. His application was rejected after he cropped off the phrase, "So help me God," from the oath, which was required by the South Carolina state constitution. He filed suit, and the South Carolina Supreme Court ruled in a split decision that the oath violated his First Amendment protections. And that still remains the case. It was not challenged up further to the federal Supreme Court. Although no longer in force, the constitutions of 7 states still exclude atheists from holding public office. So I did say that we have Jon Marx joining us today to answer the question that we have put to all of our guests on this series. What does voting mean to you? How would you answer that, Jon?
So it's interesting because there's so many dimensions to the experience of religion as it comes to like civic engagement and voting rights. I'm a Jewish atheist, and I've experienced firsthand this tension because so many voters are uncomfortable voting for people who are non-religious. Even to this day, it's very rare for atheists to win public office. And you see, just kind of as another example of the dimension of it, people who are really uncomfortable voting in churches, who feel like there's pressure when they're in a house of worship to vote a certain way. As they say, God is watching, right? So I think an indirect way of answering that question is religion does pervade a lot of our society and a lot of how we approach things like voting. So for me, voting isn't just a civic duty. For me, it's kind of a radical expression of individuality, of our choice, of our free will. But it's also sad to think that fairly recently in history, there was that much discrimination codified in law, and that even today we still have a culture that holds people to a religious litmus test that says you can be Jewish, you can be Buddhist, you can be Christian, but you have to be something. Or generally, if you're in certain parts of the country, you have to be Christian. So when we talk about what voting means, for me, in this context especially, voting isn't just about choosing someone who you like. It's not just about voting for a party. It's about standing on principles for what you believe in. And that's something that transcends all religious beliefs, all ideologies. And it's what, at least in theory, makes this country amazing, is that we do have those freedoms to express ourselves and be heard. Obviously, as we've already discussed, there are barriers. And that's not even touching things like racial barriers and discrimination and voter suppression. But for me as a voter, the radical act of standing up and being heard is one of the greatest things any person can do for themselves, not just as an American, but as a person. To be able to stand up and say, you don't get to tell me what I believe, you don't get to tell me how I'm governed, I get to decide that for myself, and how I do that is by voting and by participating. And it doesn't always go the way you want, sadly, but that's how we change things, that's how we move things forward. One step at a time is by being heard, by speaking out, and by standing up. Hope that answers your question.
Well, I think it's very well stated, Jon. I think you just said it so eloquently. And yes, you don't always get your way, but it's important to participate. And we won't see any change if people just sit by and don't vote their convictions, whatever that belief system happens to be, you know. Well, if you are interested in helping to protect voting rights, you can do that very easily with us at Civic Nebraska. We'd love for you to become a voting rights advocate. And during this time of COVID, during self-isolation, we still make it safe to do. You can do it online on our outreach circle. Very easy to join. Just scan the QR code on your screen, or you can follow the link that's listed there. And again, thank you for joining us today, Jon.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for watching.